What's going on, everyone? Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about Ken Dorsey potentially taking play calling duties from Kevin Stefanski. I'll give you my reactions to Ken Dorsey's introductory press conference today. And then we're going to talk about an idea that was floated out there yet again, a back-to-back offseason of Greg Newsome trade potential. So we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But quick self-plug, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more rumor updates throughout the entire Super Bowl week. But coming up on today's show, I want to get this question out in the open first. Should Ken Dorsey call plays? Before we get into the nitty-gritty about his press conference, right off the bat, what's your raw reaction? What's your raw opinion on whether or not Dorsey should take play calling over from Stefanski? Give me a yes or no. But now, let's talk about Ken Dorsey's introductory press conference today. It was about 30 or so minutes long, and there were some good nuggets in there. Kevin Stefanski opened it up. He did not take any questions, but he ended his press conference by saying, we all know what you guys want to ask, which is who is going to be the play caller. And as Mary Kay Cabot tweeted out, Kevin Stefanski on that play calling decision said, we'll get there. It's February 5th. He's looking forward to putting the offensive room together with Ken Dorsey. Now, the way I interpreted what Kevin Stefanski said was the tone in his voice may have said like, hey, this is a potential. Because if it wasn't a potential, I think he would have just came out and outright said, I'm still the play caller, right? Why leave that door open if it's not at least a possibility? And, well, that's what Tony Rizzo definitely picked up on. He tweeted out, while no decision has been made, listening to new OC Dorsey sounds like he'll call plays. I didn't necessarily get that exact same feeling. I think Ken Dorsey covered a lot of topics, and as far as introductory press conferences go, they never really get into too much detail. They always say similar things about how excited they are to come here. They're very upbeat about everyone in the building. He talked about how from when he first got to Cleveland as a player 15 or so years ago now to now, a lot has changed. The only thing that's the same is the front door and the stairway. So a very different vibe for him and Berea. He talked about how the vibe this year is very different and much better than it was when he first arrived in Cleveland. But I don't know if I'm on the same page of Tony here of Ken Dorsey sounded like a guy who was going to call plays. He might be the play caller, but he didn't say anything that was too revealing. Now, Daryl Ryder also tweeted this out. Play calling to me is not as important as winning football games. That was Dorsey's most direct response when he was point blank asked, do you want to be the play caller / will you be the play caller? Just play calling in general. He was a team player, right? He did not put his foot in his mouth. He didn't say, I would love to be, but if not, okay. No, he wants to win games. And that's the most important thing you want to hear from your offensive coordinator. You want egos aside, right? You want to do whatever is best for the team. And he said that, right? He is here, if it's not play calling, then to get Deshaun Watson ready every single week. Personally, I think Stefanski should still call plays. Kevin Stefanski put together, I would say, his best year as an NFL head coach. And I don't think the logical progression is you did a phenomenal job, coach of the year candidate. Let's take away your greatest strength. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Now, I can understand that as Stefanski gets older in his coaching career, he might want to offload some things because I think this is true for any profession. Anytime you get your dream job, you want to do everything, right? You want to put your hands all over it and you want to have complete control. And as you get more comfortable and as you get more confident and stable in that position, you might start delegating certain jobs and responsibilities to other people so you can stay maybe more focused on the big picture. I don't think Kevin Stefanski's at that part yet, right? That seems like something maybe Andy Reid would do, but Andy Reid has been a head coach for 20 plus years, been to numerous Super Bowls and won numerous Super Bowls. I don't think Kevin Stefanski's at that stage of his career just yet. I would like to see Kevin Stefanski continue to be the play caller. And I think Andrew Berry and the rest of Berea does as well. Because I'm old enough to remember when AB spoke to the media 2-3 weeks ago, he said this on Stefanski's play calling. We've mentioned multiple times, I think that's one of Kevin's strengths. But how that operates from year to year, that's ultimately something that we reassess. I'm just not on board with, let's go every single year into a new question of whether or not Stefanski's a play caller. If it starts to have a down tailspin, then let's get a new play caller in. But I don't think that was the case in 2023. Now, Scott Petrak also tweeted this out. New Browns offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey said he appreciates thoroughness of Kevin Stefanski's and organization. He said, in quote, "It was darn near a root canal to get this job." And that brought some laughs to the Big J's and all the Diet Coke drinkers in the room. So it was fun to see Ken Dorsey have a little bit of fun with the press conference. And overall, if you want the spark notes from it, I thought it was a solid press conference from Ken Dorsey. He talked about needing to maximize Deshaun Watson, right? And of course, he's got some experience in, I wouldn't say identical quarterback types in Cam Newton and Josh Allen, but quarterbacks that have a running element, right? Not guys that have concrete blocks for feet like the Manning brothers or Drew Brees or something like that, but guys that can extend plays. And Ken Dorsey got the best out of Cam Newton, you could argue, when Cam Newton was an NFL MVP in 2015 with Dorsey as his QB coach. And you could say that Josh Allen's best years statistically were with Ken Dorsey as his play caller. So I am warming up to this hire more and more almost by the day since they announced this hiring. And I think Ken Dorsey is definitely a different style of just person than Kevin Stefanski. Like Ken Dorsey had the entire meltdown against the Dolphins where he threw his headset in the coach's box and everything. And then you've got Kevin Stefanski, who's a little bit more mellow than Ken Dorsey. So overall, I'm excited to see what Ken Dorsey can do as the offensive coordinator. I'm upbeat about this hire, and I think Kevin Stefanski should remain the play caller. If they do hand it over to Dorsey, I don't think this is something we have to lose sleep over. I think Ken Dorsey has proven to be a good play caller. Ultimately, his demise in Buffalo were the turnovers. That's truly what bit him in the derriere. Because when they lost to the Broncos on Monday Night Football and Dorsey was fired the very next day, that was a game with 4 Buffalo turnovers. And I've always been a big believer of people want to blame coaches for more than they probably deserve. I'm not interested in blaming coaches for turnovers. Maybe a couple of them if it's a bad play or something like that. But coaches aren't the ones dropping the football when a DB punches it out, right? Coaches aren't the ones overthrowing or underthrowing footballs. A lot of it comes down to execution. So hopefully Ken Dorsey can help the Browns in limiting the turnovers, although at some point that just has to fall on the players. Now, next up on the show, we're going to talk about a potential trade for the Cleveland Browns, someone going out in Greg Newsome. But before we get to that, I do want to quickly plug our awesome sponsor today, which is Game Time. Today's show is sponsored by Game Time. If you are planning to go to the big game next week, or you want to go catch a Cavs game or Guardians game, or any other sporting event in your area, make sure you get started with Game Time first, because they are giving the Dog Pound $20 off any first purchase for any sporting event, musical, theater, comedy shows when you use promo code BROWNSCHAT. But let's talk about the big game, which is, of course, this upcoming week. And we all know that tickets to the big game are not the cheapest thing in the world. But if you're already planning on going, why not save $100 when you use code VEGAS100? So what can you use that $100 for? It could pay for maybe your parking or your first round of food and drinks at the big game. But make sure you get started with Game Time today, because whatever sporting events or theater events or any event that requires a ticket you're going to over the next couple of weeks, I want you guys to save as much money as possible. And you can do that with Game Time because they are giving the Dog Pound $20 off. So download Game Time today. And if you want to go to the big game, use code VEGAS100. If you just want to go to any other sporting event in your area, use code BROWNSCHAT for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video, but download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So a lot of you guys sent me this tweet from Chops, who I think is an excellent Twitter follower if you're not following him already on Twitter. But he tweeted out, not a deep DB draft class, and the Browns are very deep at corner. Makes you wonder what the return would be for ... Now, there are 3 corners that I think could yield something in a trade. Denzel Ward, who is under contract and coming off arguably his best season. Martin Emerson, who's on the cheapest deal of all 3, and he has been an awesome get 2 years in. And then there's Greg Newsome, who, when you talk about those 3 corners, he always comes up as the runt of the bunch. I'm not interested in trading Greg Newsome. And let me tell you why. So you trade Greg Newsome for a day 2 pick. Let's say best case scenario, a second rounder, okay? And you're going to use that second rounder to replace Greg Newsome in a self-admittedly bad DB class. Make it make sense. Why would you trade Greg Newsome away for a day 2 pick, which you are inevitably going to have to use on a cornerback when this is a bad cornerback class? Right? You are almost signing up to just get a worse corner. I understand that this is a bad DB class, and maybe that raises some guys' value, but the issue is you don't have enough players at that position to just sacrifice not having Greg Newsome. Do we not remember when the Broncos and the Rams beat the crap out of the Browns and Denzel Ward was not there? And everyone came out of that road trip thinking, man, it just goes to show how important it is to have really good depth at cornerback. And so fast forward to February, and we're just going to forget about that and trade Newsome away to draft a corner when it's a bad QB class, a cornerback class? I don't get it. I just don't really follow the logic of that. Now, Greg Newsome in 2023 had his best season. There's no doubt about it. 45 tackles, 14 pass breakups, 2 picks, 1 touchdown, which was a beautiful pick 6 against the Baltimore Ravens, which paved the way to that improbable, incredible comeback at M&T Bank Stadium. Now, when you stack up Greg Newsome to the other corners on this team, I know Cam Mitchell had some nice moments, and man, if Cam Mitchell caught that ball against the Seahawks, the Browns have 12 wins, but whatever. I'm still just not on board with trading away Greg Newsome. It's also a good moment to remind you guys that PFF is not the end-all, be-all. There is just no way I am going to believe that there were 65 better cornerbacks in the National Football League last year than Martin Emerson. But Greg Newsome, when we take a closer look at him, I mean, he's just gotten better, it feels like, year after year. And that's how it should be, from his rookie season to his 3rd season. He still played primarily a slot corner role, and he talked about how much he loved and thrived under Jim Schwartz's defense. You used a first-round pick on him, and I would say you got first-round pick value, like statistically, in 2023. So now you want to trade him for a day 2 pick? And just use that day 2 pick to draft a new corner when it's a bad cornerback class? I don't see the logic in it. I do not follow. So let me know. Would you trade Greg Newsome for a second rounder? If the Carolina Panthers with the first pick in the second round, pick number 33 called for Greg Newsome, yeah, that'd be pretty tempting. But then again, go look at previous second rounders. Like, there are some great picks in there still. It's still very early in the draft, but to act like a second round pick is a lock for a starting caliber player, like I said, go look at previous second rounders. You might be surprised to the batting average of those players eventually materializing into starting caliber players is not as high as you might think it is. So I will take Greg Newsome on this team over a lottery ticket in round 2 for a corner in a bad cornerback draft class. I'll also add this. Trading a good starting caliber player at an extremely valuable position, regardless of the draft class that year, I'm going to pass. Just that surface level right there. I really need to know there's a good return coming back. It'd be one thing if Greg Newsome had been a bit disappointing and year 3 was supposed to be a big breakout year and it didn't happen, and 3 years in he's got no interceptions, but that is not the case. So when you've got a known proven commodity, and sure, Greg Newsome might not be a lockdown corner that's on the Browns for 10 years like Denzel Ward is, but it's really tough to find good cornerbacks. And it's maybe the 3rd or 4th most position in the National Football League right now. Quarterback is number 1, edge is 2, and then you could argue between wide receiver, corner, and left tackle for 3, 4, and 5. You can, arrange it however you want, but if it's not 3, it's not far from it. So trading away an extremely valuable position like corner for a good player, I'm not interested. You can look at his stats again, right? 14 pass breakups this year. He stayed healthy for the most part. Yeah, he missed some games here or there, and that's not ideal, but I'm going to pass. Now, I understand the logic of the Browns need more draft picks, right? That's a different kind of conversation. Now, we talk about how you get those draft picks, and we get more in detail, and maybe people will disagree with the method. But the Browns do need more draft capital. They've got a second, they've got a third, no first. We're talking 2 picks in the top 100. That, I think, is the worst of all 32 teams. In terms of value, especially like where they're picking in the top 100, they're not on the clock till pick 54. That's the longest wait of all 32 teams. So, yeah, if you're out there beating the drum of Browns need more draft picks, I hear you, dude. I get it. But to trade Greg Newsome for a round 2, maybe round 3 pick, and then you have to replace him. You need another cornerback. In a bad Q, like, here are your corners that I think could go in round 2 or day 2 and, round 2 and round 3. These aren't awful corners. I'm not saying that. But I think there is something to be said about when you look at all the mock drafts coming out, how many of them include corner in the top 10? You've got guys that are going to go round 1 that in other years would not be first-round picks, but teams that really need cornerback are going to have to reach on some of these players. So everyone sort of slides up a little bit, but they don't really deserve to be in that spot if they were going up against players from previous draft classes. So for that reason, if it's not abundantly clear, I'll make it abundantly clear. I'm not interested in trading Greg Newsome for a day 2 draft pick. All right, let's pick a card. We got Cullen on the 1s and 2s today. Cullen, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking we've talked about a lot of day 2, day 3 corners.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Okay. Diamonds in the rough.
Diamonds in the rough.
So I got to go diamonds.
Okay.
And I think we talked about day 2 in that last graphic, so I'm going to go 2 of diamonds.
You know what? I love that exact train of thought. I'll just go day 3 or round 3 and go 3 of diamonds. 3 of diamonds. Here we go. We suck. 9 of hearts. 9 of hearts. Okay. That's going to do it for us on this edition of the Cleveland Browns Report. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will sign off and see you guys later.